Go.
Everyone, Zach Parks with Christians for Kokesh, or whatever name we're going to figure out now. We're still hoping to do this weekly, the Libertarian Apologist. I put out these little 20, 30-minute videos talking about Christians and libertarianism. So this week, I was hoping to cover the spiritual impact of the military-industrial complex. Now, what does that mean? That sounds very odd. Well, actually, if you watch President Eisenhower's farewell address, he talks about the political, economic, and even spiritual impact of the military-industrial complex. He actually he says the word spiritual. And if you watch, I think the whole speech is like 16 minutes. I think it's at like the 8-minute mark, 8:30 mark, where he says that. And so what does that mean? Let's unpack that. What is the spiritual impact of the military-industrial complex? Well, first example that I know of off the top of my head would be Blackwater Security, the infamous private security company that went from a small company to a huge company because of the Iraq War. That group is headed up by Eric Prince, who's been a longtime friend of Dr. James Dobson. I'm sure you know that name. And he is.
When you thank James Dobson, thank the devil.
And he is the head of Focus on the Family, which is like probably one of the biggest ministries. Like probably is the biggest family ministry in the United States.
Sorry, wrong James Dobson.
Okay. Yeah, he's the head of Focus on the Family, and the Prince Foundation has made some hefty donations to Focus on the Family, as well as the Alliance Defense Fund, Council for National Policy, Family Research Council, Promise Keepers, and the American Family Association. These are all household that if you grew up conservative Christian, you've heard of a lot of these groups.
Yeah, so can you hit that list one more time? So it's Focus on the Family, right?
Focus on the Family, Alliance Defense Fund, Council.
So Focus on the Family, for those of you who don't know, is probably one of the largest Christian organizations in the country right now. They offer all sorts of stuff. The church that I went to for a long time had used their material for marriage counseling, both before the wedding and then like when things got shaky and people wanted to have some conversations. Which, if you're in that position, go to your pastor. Like, if you're struggling in your marriage, get help. So, like, they're all about two-parent households.
Yeah, and it's all about legislating morality and going to war in Iraq in, I guess that was 2003. Yeah, it was 2003 when the Iraq War started. Dr. Dobson was all over the media saying that we had a Christian duty to invade Iraq, and didn't bother to disclose that he had financial connections to private contractors. So when President Eisenhower talks about the spiritual impact of the military-industrial complex, that is a very clear example of that, as well as all of these major Christian foundations, these far-right, guess I shouldn't say far-right.
No, you can say far-right. You can say far-right.
Far-right, yeah, I guess far-right, because according to the tax records, between 2001 and 2014, the foundation gave $6.2 million to Family Research Council and $5.2 million to Focus on the Family. Much of that likely came from U.S. tax dollars, money from the Iraq War that's being fed into the coffers of American ministries.
Yeah. So, and just a quick side note for all our viewers, here's what's going to happen. Whenever we reference something, I'm a bit of a nerd here. We're going to throw all of those links below. So it's not Zach says, it's this organization that is reliable says, or President Eisenhower's speech says this, because he's the one that said it.
Yeah, I'm looking for... Yeah, it's not. Where are the tax records?
Was it millions or was it billions?
Millions.
Was it like a million or like 10 million?
It was $6.2 million. This is according to an article in Mother Jones, not tax records. According to an article, I've seen the tax records. I got to find those again. According to an article, Mother Jones, they donated $6.2 million to the Family Research Council, $5.2 million to focus on the family. And this is the Prince Foundation, which Eric Prince is currently the vice president.
Yeah, so real quick, let's hit who Eric Prince is. Eric Prince, depending on who you are, depends on how you see Eric. Conservative people are going to see Eric as a wartime hero. Some Democrats are going to feel that way. However, let me give you a rundown who Eric Prince is. Eric Prince is a upper echelon kid born to a very wealthy family. His dad has ties to Congress. Therefore, he does what all rich white kids that want to act like they're serving their country do. He went to Annapolis. He graduated Buds, which, as a vet who is now anti-war, I'm very shaky on this stuff because it's like, dude, he graduated Buds. He must be fit.
Navy SEAL. He was a Navy SEAL.
Yeah. So basic underwater demolition school, or Buds, is Navy SEAL school. One of the viewers here one of the producers here almost got to go to Buds, and he's kind of happy he didn't. Just no, thank you. Like that's just like. But anyways, so Eric goes into the SEAL teams. For those of you who don't know, you go to Buds, basic underwater demolition school. Then you get sent to a team, and then from your team, you get all this additional training because not all the SEAL teams do the same thing. They all have their own thing, right? SEAL Team 6 is the anti-terrorism team, right? The infamous SEAL Team 6, the guys that shot Bin Laden, they were sent on that raid for a reason. They'd been practicing that one job for many, many years. Those guys are also a part of other SEAL teams beforehand. But anyways, Eric becomes a member of the SEAL teams. He gets his trident. He gets to do what he wants to do. He goes forward in life. He has a few issues. He has more issues. He has even more issues. He comes to his promotion board, and they say, hey, Eric, I think it's time for you to leave. So Eric leaves, basically because they're about to force him out. So he does what every rich white kid does. And he says, hey, Dad, can I have like $10 million? And his dad gives him some land and a bunch of money. And in North Carolina, he started training, like tactical training classes, like boom, boom, pow, pow stuff. And then he eventually somehow starts to train Navy SEALs again, even though he has a bad reputation with them. His brother was also a congressman for a little while. I think that might be important.
Yeah.
They're doing minor stuff. They're doing like $50,000 jobs, $100,000 jobs, which, to give you an idea, when I walked into Afghanistan, I had about $3 million in gear and training. So that stuff racks up quick. So to have a $100,000 job isn't that big of a deal. 9/11 happens, and he starts taking no-bid contracts, which basically means someone says, hey, can you do this? And he says, sure. And they say, how much? And he goes, just write me a blank check. Right. And he goes from a 50-acre compound to a 4,500-acre compound like that. Doing no-bid contracts, building their own armored vehicles, building their own helicopters, getting the licensing for all of this. Meanwhile, his guys are running people over in the roads of Iraq. They have no lights. They have no sirens. They have no real authority. They're going from one compound to another. They're afraid they're going to get hit. So what do? They just keep driving. They don't stop for red lights. They don't stop for pedestrians. And yes, if they have to, they use the sidewalks. Right? Think about this. An armored vehicle on a sidewalk. While you're walking down the road, if you don't get out quick enough, you're dead. Because they're not going 20, they're going 80 the entire time. So it created a very deadly situation. It was Blackwater, then it turned to Blackfoot, and I think its current name is Z.
It went from Z, and now this article here says it's Academy.
Oh yeah, that's right. But they don't spell it like the sporting goods store. They spell it some weird way.
They spell it with an I. Yeah.
Hey, isn't there a Bible verse that talks about your name being valuable? If you have a good, if you have a good name, it's valuable. So if you have to change your name all the time, you might want to do a character check.
That is, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to make sure people knew who Eric Prince was.
Oh yeah, that's very important.
Oh, and by the way, he doesn't even come back into the States. He's not allowed.
I'll have to look that up.
He lives in Saudi Arabia now. They may have dropped the charges, but at some point he had war crime charges on him. Yeah, he lives in Saudi Arabia, or at least he did.
My main frustration is that the private contractors get singled out, while the soldiers who also do stuff like that just get off scot-free. Or people say it doesn't happen. Yeah, it does. Ask anybody.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Zach's the brains. I'm just kind of here. Zach, I said, what do you want to do? Zach said this, sent me a video. So here's what I did. I joined the Navy. I somehow ended up in the desert. I don't know. There's no water there. But no, I was a aircraft firefighter. My first tour, I kind of sort of didn't leave the base a whole lot. I did a little bit. My second base, I was expeditions unit, which meant that we left. Like, we went and handled stuff outside of post. That's where I ended up earning my Bronze Star, my Purple Heart. Most people in Afghanistan don't leave Bagram or Leatherneck. Bagram and Leatherneck are bigger than the town I currently live in. Like, there's several hundred acres, several square miles apiece. But I ended up working for a company called Triple Canopy, and it's where I went to Zimbabwe and who I went to Zimbabwe with. And I went from making, when I was in the States in the Navy, I was making about $27,000. I was 22, not bad money for a 22-year-old. When I was overseas, I was making 2.5 times that. So do the math, like 60, almost 70 grand. Really good money. I joined Triple Canopy with all of my qualifications. They throw me some, and Triple Canopy is just a smaller version of Blackwater, and they do more diverse stuff. Like, they do the shoot 'em up, bang 'em up stuff, but they also do a bunch of other stuff. And Academy and Triple Canopy are the two biggest companies, and they do a lot of training of national forces. So when I went to Zimbabwe, I was teaching guys how to shoot people and fight fire. And I was making $2,500 a day.
Wow.
So now you understand why I went.
Yeah. That is a lot of money.
Yeah, $2,500 a day. And the complaint is, well, you have to pay for your own gear. Well, when you're making $2,500 a day, I'll buy my own tools.
You can do it.
Hey, boss, give me $2,500 a day. I'll buy my own drills.
Yeah. Wow. That is crazy. And that was my first. I was doing a little research on James Dobson. Literally, when I was in Bible college years ago, I guess it was 8-9 years ago now, and that's when I stumbled across that. I stumbled across his relationship with Eric Prince, and this is an NPR article that I'm looking at. Blackwater's Prince has GOP Christian group ties, and it doesn't. This article doesn't go into. It kind of whitewashes it. It doesn't go into deep detail of a lot of the donations. But when you follow the money, when you see the tax records, I'm trying to find the specific tax record I found where it was, I believe it was between 2003 and 2006, Blackwater donated $571,000 to focus on the family, while they were making huge amounts of money off the Iraq War that Dr. Dobson had helped bring about. using his position. Pay-to-play ministry is what that is. And that was I was shocked, angry, and I couldn't believe it. That kind of abuse of authority, abuse of the cloth, and hearing President Eisenhower's farewell address and hearing him reference the spiritual impact of the military-industrial complex got me thinking. And this is the real clear example. So the Prince family and the Prince Foundation, they have their connections to all of these Christian groups, major family Christian groups. But there's more than that as well. I need to find the news report just after Hurricane Katrina about the clergy brigades. So let's see, clergy brigades.
And while you're doing that, I want to read something. So for those of you who aren't aware of this phrase, the military-industrial complex refers to the relationship between the government, the military, and the businesses that make things for the military. For example, the businesses that can give money to politicians and elections.
Mm-hmm.
So a soldier's got a lot of gear, and someone's got to make that gear. And someone's got to make the airplane, and someone's got to make fuel for the airplane, and someone's got to do all this. So when people say this is a 15 or 17 trillion dollar war, and that number might be a little off now, I don't know. Yeah, there's reason for that. There's a lot that goes in. It's just the way it is. So there's a lot of money to be made in war. Not only because, the country we're currently in has a lot of oil, but because it takes like I said, this guy.
Just you alone.
I was not SEAL Team 6. I was not MARSOC. I was not DevGru. I was not CAG. I was not any of those things. I was some dude with a water hose and a gun. $3 million. $3 million. That's really bad Spanish. I apologize. But that's just kind of the way it works.
Yeah. War is very expensive, and that's why we have so much of it.
Especially when there's no bid contracts.
No bid contracts. Explain, what exactly is a no bid contract? Okay.
So if I wanted Zach to redo my wall over here, there's nothing wrong with my wall, but let's say I wanted Zach to re-sheetrock my wall. Zach would come in and say, okay, you have 200 square feet of wall. I charge this. The price is going to be this. And we're going to shake hands on it. And when Zach is done, I'm going to pay him. There can be some margin of error. Like Zach said, we had an issue here and I had to adjust this. I had to fix this stud. So it's $50 more, whatever. A no-bid contract is, hey, we don't really have an idea of what this is going to cost. So we'll just let you know afterwards. Whereas what's supposed to happen in the federal government, from everything from war to a cell phone, what's supposed to happen is they're supposed to say, hey, and I got a really, really, really good life example here. An M16. Recently, they changed manufacturers from Colt to, I think, SIG. The new pistol SIG, so let's use that. The new M9, whatever they're calling it these days. They said, the U.S. military said, hey, we need a pistol that can do this. It's about this big. It does this thing. And they wrote up the specs, and they gave it to every gun manufacturer. And every gun manufacturer said, I can make that for $100. I can make that for $200. I can make that. And they had a bid. And they all put in their bid, and they all said, hey, I can make this weapon for X amount of dollars. And the U.S. government says, lowest bid. What Eric Prince did is he said, just give me a blank check. And they said, sure, why not? It's not our money.
Yeah.
So it's like any other company, right? So I said I made $2,500 a day. I got a feeling the higher ups were making $2,500 off of me being there, if not vastly more. Like my boss makes more than I do right now. He makes money off of me. That's the way capitalism works. So I got a feeling they were making a lot of money off dudes overseas. And the most famous instance of private security, and to make this aware, the word company, like I work for Viking Metals, a company. Walmart is a company. That word derives itself from the companies of men, like a military company that walked around France in the 2nd century. And they were soldiers for hire. So soldiers for hire have been around since before Jesus. The Romans probably used them. There's some really good evidence they did. Everybody used soldiers for hire.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was always the rule.
That's kind of how we won the war. Like the Revolution War was done that way.
Yep.
But in modern day history, the most common instance would be in Najaf. Who was in Najaf? James Yeager was in Najaf. Travis Haley was in Najaf. Ben Mookie Thomas was in Najaf. And they were all Blackwater guys. And it later came out that Ben Mookie Thomas, who is a washed-up Navy SEAL, who if I get one more call about Ben Mookie Thomas, I'm going to stop answering the phone. Shot more innocent civilians. They had a compound, and what had been happening was these guys would drive down the road, they would get hit, and their goal wasn't to keep going, but they would stop and they would chase these guys down and stomp them. And when they stomped them, they stopped anybody that got near them. So it was like, if I walk up to a cop on a traffic stop and start videotaping him, I get shot. So Ben Mookie Thomas was doing a lot of this garbage. He was chasing dudes down. He was ordering other guys to chase guys down. People were listening to him because he was a SEAL, but they didn't realize that he had his trident taken away for misconduct in the Navy, and he'd been kicked out of the Navy for misconduct. Nobody was aware of this because it's go time. Get boys on that plane, send them over there. But they were hunting dudes down, and it came back to bite them. And they were on a compound, and some people shot at the building, and a few hours later, there's something like 400 dead civilians. And they claim that everybody had a rifle, but the pictures they took don't justify that comment. And this comes from a guy who has stood the enemy in the face while firing a rifle. I'm not some dude who just like opposes war. I'm some dude who opposes war because he's seen the freaking horrors of it. I did 2 tours. I've lost friends. I'm not going to say war is never the answer, but if you ever sat down and had a civilized conversation, war is not the answer. War is not the answer to chase people down and shoot children in the face. If you're that guy, I'll give you my address. Like there's no room for that. There's warriorhood and then there's psychopath actions.
Yes. Yes.
But back to what you wanted to talk about.
Hey, that was good. Yeah, that was really good. Definitely appreciate that. And so let's see, clergy.
Are you looking for the guys that were talking about listening to the government during Katrina? Like they were preaching messages from like Romans 13 and they were taking passages out of context?
Yeah. Yes. And Chuck Baldwin, who was the Constitution Party candidate 2008, he has a blurb about it. I'm reading this because I can't find anything else. I know I've seen the video. I've seen the interviews with the pastors and the news reports on it. I just, for some reason, it's not coming up. And it's FEMA established clergy response teams, a program in which pastors were instructed to cooperate with the federal government in the event of a national emergency. Pastors have been instructed to teach, obey the government lessons from Romans 13, and to assist the government in asking parishioners to turn in firearms and to relocate if instructed to do so by the feds. Latest report that he saw, and this was 2013, said pastors in over 1,300 counties have attended these classes. And so that is outrageous. That is unconstitutional, for one thing, and that was the reason the Founding Fathers put the First Amendment in primarily is so that religion could not be used to hijack politics and to hijack government policy for the sake of totally, so that politics could not be hijacked, so that religion could not be hijacked, I guess I should say,
Yeah.
For political purposes. And that is outrageous, and it is ridiculous. And I remember one of the interviews with one of the pastors, he said something to the effect of, we'll worry about all this other stuff when the crisis is over. For right now, you need to cooperate. Something to the effect of, look, quit being selfish, quit being a brat, turn in your guns, come on.
Yeah, so just a quick relay of what's going on at that time. Katrina hits, and somehow Walmart was ready to respond with all their trucks to sell their stuff, but the federal government that says they're here to serve and protect us was not. So as you all know, people ended up dead in the street, some because of gunshot wounds, some because of old age. Like, it's a weird situation. People die because of all sorts of things on a regular basis. Add in however many feet of water, add in civil unrest, people are going to drop a little bit higher than normal. So, and I say that way to say this: the death toll wasn't too much larger than a regular day. Kind of like coronavirus now. Like, everyone's like, oh, 100,000 people. It's like 100,000 people die every 12 hours. You want to talk about that real quick? But anyways, they're doing this thing and they're going through this stuff, and the government sends in the guard. Government sends in the National Guard. Police are abandoning posts. They're not answering calls, and because they're not answering calls, murder probably didn't go too much, but violent crime and theft skyrocketed. Some of that theft probably had to do with the fact that people didn't have the supplies they needed and they were ill-prepared and they just needed stuff. Which I'm not going to get into the morality of that right now, but it's a hard situation. It's kind of why, and I'll say this: I have a little bit of food in the house just in case. I have a little bit of water in the house just in case. But it was one of those situations where people were doing dumb stuff and people were doing stuff that maybe I wouldn't do. So the government says, hey, turn in your guns. We're not going to come save you. We're not responding to phone calls right now, but we're going to need your guns. And people said, is he smoking crack? No. Right now I need my firearm, so no thank you. So the National Guard and FEMA went to and had a meeting with a bunch of pastors and said, hey, can you do us a solid? And some of them did, and some of them didn't. And the ones that didn't, I salute you.
Yep. Trying to pull up that clip of I believe it's the New Orleans police chief, who said publicly, guns will be taken, no one will be allowed to be armed. But yeah, they took guns, they went door to door. The military, the National Guard, went door to door confiscating guns. And I'm seeing a bunch of videos. It's probably in one of these consultation videos. And like, here's a video. 10 years ago, government went door to door confiscating guns. It's probably in there, but we don't have time to pull that up. But yeah, that's this has been a lightweight presentation of the spiritual impact of the military-industrial complex. I guess a good way to summarize it would be that a lot of these big contractors, because I'm sure it's not just Eric Prince. I'm sure
there's a couple hundred.
I'm sure there's quite a few who are well invested. A lot of them are friends. I'm sure James Dobson is not the only evangelical leader who is friends with major figures in the deep state. And so there is just as there is deep state, bleeding into the media, bleeding into academia, there is also bleeding into the pulpit.
Yeah.
And it's wrong, it's outrageous, and we might do, I kind of threw this together at the last second, and so we might, in the future, do another episode, do some more research, do another episode, but that's where I think we're good for tonight.
Yeah, I just want to say a few things. I want to say a few things, and I talk for 10 minutes at a shot. I'm sorry. But here's what the military-industrial complex is. It's a system that profits off of war, right? And if you profit off something, you're not going to want to stop because it's profitable and you like money. Those are just facts. I'm not being ridiculous here. I'm not talking about Jeffrey Epstein being like committing suicide. I'm being reasonable. But seriously, it's a group of people that make money off of war. Because they make money, they don't want to stop.
Right.
Let's talk about some of the negative aspects for the individual warfighter and his family. I was 8 when the war kicked off. Did not see my dad for 1,000 days. My dad went and fought in a war. I did not see him for 3 years. Let's think about what that means. I'm 8. I'm 9. I'm 10. I'm 11. He comes home for 2 weeks and leaves again. My entire middle school career is defined by my dad not being there. And I made it out lucky because my dad came home. So you got some kid whose dad dies. You got some baby whose dad dies. He now no longer has a father figure in the house. How does that negatively influence that child?
Yep.
And I just assume that we have libertarians that aren't Christians and Christians that aren't libertarians and libertarians that are Christians watching this. I don't know where you stand, but I think two of the most important things for a child to turn into a good functioning adult is a dad that loves them and a mom that loves them. And if dad's in the dirt, daddy don't love them. Like, they don't get that experience. So therefore they suffer. And if they suffer that way, I'm going to say this. I don't have any kids. Zach does, so maybe he needs to talk for a second. But I think your relationship with your physical dad, with your biological dad, drastically affects the way you view God.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. And my pastor, who is an Iraq war veteran, has actually talked about that. We take our relationship with our dad and then we blow that up into dad being the big man in the sky. And that's the perception we often have, is God is our really big dad. And that can be, and sometimes hopefully that's good, but many times, of course, that's bad. If you had an active father or an abusive father, then yes, that's a problem.
Yeah, and I'll be real open and honest about this. I still struggle from time to time with whether or not God's going to abandon me, because for a while I felt abandoned by my biological father. I love him. We talk all the time, but there was 6 or 7 years from the time I was 8 to the time I graduated high school. Like, I joined because I wanted to impress my dad.
Yep.
And I still struggle with that on a spiritual level. So, like, that's one aspect of the spiritual issues we're having with the military-industrial complex. So that's one.
That's an interesting way to. I hadn't even thought of looking at it that way, but yeah, the personal moral ruin brought on by war and the ripple. And conservatives love to talk about how the welfare state is tearing apart families. Let's talk about the military. Let's talk about war. Well, let's talk what that's doing.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the way society accepts warriors back into their culture, right? The first time I ever went to jail was because I was hanging out somewhere. I had just come home from a war, and some dude says, "Hey, move your truck or I'll beat your..." And I said, "Cool." And his girlfriend called the cops. right? War destroys your ability to have thought, right? Because the only thing you think about is threat, bam, and I don't mean with my fist. Like, I can go get the gun, but I mean bang, 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 bang. And I don't care if you're on the right side. I don't care if you're on the wrong side. I don't care. Taking another man's life affects you psychologically in a way that I can't explain.
Yeah.
And it affects the way that you handle other people in a way that I can't explain. It affects the way you deal with your anger and your temper in a way that I can't explain. Like, firsthand experience, that's Afghanistan. That's me doing some really bad things. And let's talk about that for a moment. This is me being glorified for using violence on another person. Like, I was taught, don't hit, don't steal, don't kill.
Right.
And then they said, hey, killed that guy, have some shiny things. Like, I'm not, if you're a vet and you're hearing this and you don't know who I am, man, I love you. You're my brother. I'll go to war with you, like, right here, right now. Like, I got your back. But, dude, if you're questioning some stuff, leave a comment down. Private message me. I'm the holder of the YouTube account. Like, let me know and we can talk. I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking what was done to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to clarify two things. I don't know if Zach's been made aware of it. Oh, no, you haven't, because I've told you. My enlistment was attacked last week. Somebody said, that's Zach's wife. Somehow a picture of, like, your wife's account popped up. Yeah, it was like your wife in that red dress thing. But anyways, someone attacked me on a private message and said, hey, you're going to admit that you weren't in combat because whatever. And I sent him a copy of my DD 214, and he was like, oh, my bad. It's like, yeah, you're freaking bad. But I've been there. I've done that. I don't think Zach's a lesser of a person. I think Zach might be a better person because, he hasn't killed people. But if you're in that weird area and you're trying to figure out what to do with your life, know one thing. Christ loves you. Jesus loves you. God loves you. And all you have to do is admit that you were wrong in what you did and ask for his forgiveness and ask for his help and surrender your soul. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not much more than that, dude. There are no works on this. Like you don't have to do a Hail Mary. Like, you don't even have to play football. But I'm always saying jokes. I get in trouble for it behind the pulpit all the time. But but no, I mean, just know that God loves you.
Yep. My pastor, he was actually a West Point graduate. He went as a company commander. He was a captain. He also has a Bronze Star. He was there during Fallujah. And he, just this past Memorial Day, he talked about it in his sermon. He lost 6 guys while he was there. And to my understanding, that is high. That's not normal in a company. That is a thankfully, fortunately and unfortunately, high number. And he gave orders and people died. And he's been quite open about sometimes it was unnecessary. He gave orders and people died when they didn't have to. And he knows he's forgiven. He doesn't carry the weight of that. He doesn't wake up in the night screaming and stabbing the mattress. Because he knows he's forgiven. He knows he does not have to. That's pinned to the cross. It's not pinned to him. And that kind of forgiveness, that is available to everyone.
Amen.
Who has gone to war and has taken part in what may have felt like an atrocity.
Yeah. And to clarify, companies 80 to 150 people, what I'm reading here, they try to keep those numbers smaller just because it's easier to handle a smaller number of people. So let's say it was 90. He lost 1 in 15. But that really doesn't matter. Here's what matters. That man had to look at 6 individual puddles of blood with one of his boys.
Mhm.
I've had good officers, and good officers treated me like they were my dad, and some of them weren't that much older than I was. They were like, "Dude, you're my son." So what he did was he lost 6 of his sons. I couldn't ever understand that pain. I've lost 3 brothers, and then we lost some guys from Triple Canada, people I didn't know them, and the connection there wasn't as big because it just wasn't. But man, think about this for a moment. How many, like, the difference between being homeless as a citizen and being homeless as a vet skyrockets. 22 veterans a day don't kill themselves. That's a false number. 22 veterans in 31 states kill themselves. That means 19 states aren't reporting the numbers. So when you hear 22 veterans a day commit suicide, based on the statistics, it's probably closer to 47.
Oh.
Yeah. Not all states report whether or not the person that committed suicide was a vet. Yeah, let that sink in. Think about the spiritual damage that has. If you're so desperate, I'm not saying Christians don't kill themselves. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're so desperate that you shoot yourself,
yeah, I know, because I saw an article, it was years ago, a suicide note that a veteran had left, basically saying he deserved it. Basically saying he had it, this was right, that he was guilty of war crimes, and that this was what he should do. And for anyone feeling that guilt out there, you don't have to feel that way. You do not have to carry that guilt. You can have freedom. There's freedom in Jesus. There is. I don't care if that's a cheesy old hymn. It's true.
Dude, hymns have some like theologically correct lessons in them.
I wish we'd bring back hymns. I'd love to hold a hymn during a church service.
I got a few. I'll send you one.
Nice. I think one of my favorite is "It Is Well With My Soul" by Horatio Spafford. Very good one. He had lost, his son died. His son had gotten sick and died. He had 3 or 4 daughters who all drowned when a boat went down. He lost his ministry, like all of his buildings and everything, in the Great Chicago Fire. I mean, it was just thing after thing after thing happening in his life.
You know where he wrote the first line of that? "It is well with my soul." Do you know where he wrote that?
Where did he write that?
He wrote that in the North Atlantic, passing the side of his sisters or his daughters.
Man, it is well with my soul. God has a plan, and God has a higher plan, and he trusted God, and he believed in God, believed in Jesus, and he knew he was forgiven, and he knew that God had a plan for him, and that there was a bigger picture to consider. And some people say that's sadomasochistic.
It's love.
It's love.
I'll tell you this right now. I'm not going to get into too much detail. One of my favorite Bible verses. I got saved when I was 21, but I was forced to memorize scripture in the Navy because on the halls of DC, this is true story. If you're a DC in the Navy, confirm this for me. When you walk into the berthing compartment for the first time at the school, when you walk into the hall where you sleep and eat chow, greater love hath none than this, that I shall lay down my life for my brother.
Yep.
I think that's NIV. I'm not sure.
Trying to think. I'm trying to say it's something John too. No.
Yeah, it's John. It's John.
It's John. Okay, yeah, John. I don't remember the chapter and verse.
But I'm gonna look it up because I don't like misquoting scripture. It's gonna drive me nuts all night.
Probably a good habit.
John 15:13.
Yeah. Okay.
Greater love hath no man than this, meaning you can't experience greater love than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. The next verse ye are my friends.
And that's Jesus to
speaking.
his disciples, right?
Yep, that's Jesus speaking to the disciples. I'm alive today because one of my friends that died took my spot. So I can tell you firsthand, taking that bullet, I didn't say bullet, I said billet. Taking that spot, that's a big decision. And once again, like if you're still struggling with that, reach out to me, man. Please don't do something foolish and hurt yourself or attempt to kill yourself or successfully kill yourself. Like reach out. We're here. I would put my phone number up, but I've been warned against that. There were some issues at the National Convention last weekend, but
yeah.
Did you see that? Did you see that I got screamed at for putting? I tried to give somebody my email address over the Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
One of the monitors like started screaming. She's like, "Stop! You'll get a bunch of porn and random phone calls." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "It happened to me," and she starts crying. I'm just like, "What in the world did you get in your email?"
Okay. So, any final thoughts to wrap this up?
Just guys, we love you. We're here for you. I'm feeling really under the weather, as you can tell. So
Okay.
pray for me if you will. But guys, we love you. If you need something, reach out. And just keep this in mind. Taking another man's life, which is war, should only be done in self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
If they have more oil than you, who gives a rip? It's not worth it. I struggle daily with the thought of, well, not daily anymore, but the thought of how many kids did I orphan? How many moms did I widow? How many weddings did I make not happen because of my actions overseas? And I'm not questioning your actions as a war fighter. But what I'm saying is, I just don't see how war can be worth it.
Yeah.
So the spiritual implications are devastating. And my relationship with God's number one. And my thing to you is, if you haven't done that, don't damage your relationship with God in that way. And if you have, know that you can be forgiven. I struggle with it only because it doesn't kill me on a daily basis, because I know that Christ died on the cross for my actions over there. So just, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Anybody, you can message me through Christians for Kokesh on the page. I guess I'll keep that going. I'll keep that going. But yeah, good talking to you, man.
Yeah, man.
Look forward to it next week.
Awesome. Guys, we love you. We're praying for you. If you need anything, holler. Bye.